Oh, hi there. Come here. I want to show you something cool.
Hello there.
Hi, how's it going? What can I do for you today?
I need to check something in clients. Can we go there?
Sure, I'm clicking on the client's link for you. Done. You're now on the client's page. What would you like to do next?
Yeah, everything is in order. Can we go back to support tickets?
Clicking on the support tickets link.
Okay. Yeah, I need to add a support ticket.
I will click on the Add Support Ticket button for you. Clicking the Add Support Ticket button now.
Okay, so I had a client in IKEA that sent me an email saying that he cannot get in with his Microsoft credentials, so he cannot log in. Most likely, we will need to reset his credentials. So, can you fill the ticket for me?
Sure, I'll fill out the ticket with the details about the client's issue with logging in using Microsoft credentials. Let's provide the necessary information. I've entered the short description. Now I'll add the problem details.
Yeah, feel free to put the problem, the cause, and the solution you think.
I've added the problem description. Now I'll include the cause.
Yeah, okay, that's enough for now, so you can save. Okay, that's cool. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Hello again.
Hello, how can I assist you today?
Yeah, I have a client that just sent me an email to open a ticket.
Great, let's open a support ticket. Would you like to fill in the client details, description, and any other information for the ticket?
Yes, I'm going to send you the email. So I just sent you the email. Can you fill the short description and the problem?
Sure. For the short description, I'll use unable to log into Microsoft Teams and Outlook. And for the problem, I'll write the user is facing authentication issues preventing access to Microsoft Teams and Outlook. Multiple troubleshooting steps, including restarting the computer, checking the internet connection, clearing cache and cookies, and trying different login methods, have failed to resolve the issue. Let's update the ticket with this information.
Okay, sounds good. Can you fill?
Done. Now filling in the problem details. Done. The problem details are filled in. Anything else you'd like to add to the ticket?
No, that's perfect. You can save.
Done. The ticket is saved.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
So this is the real-time API from OpenAI. So what you guys saw in this demo was an adaptive assistant that uses a streamed multi-channel recognition, and we can have real-time conversations with this model. The cool thing about this model is that it does not only work with audio, but he is multi-channel. So it means that we can give him at the same time audio, text, and we can get from him also at the same time we can have text transcriptions or other type of text, but also functions. So we can use him to call functions. And this is the secret of how I can make him interact with the website. So let's see how this works. In today's video, we are going to explore this real-time API and showcase this with an OutSystems example. So in this case, I'm going to start, or I started with showcasing the adaptive AI assistant in an OutSystems application. Then I'm going to explore a bit this concept of a real-time API and how we can implement it, what are the differences with the normal API, response APIs that we are used to use with OpenAI or ChatGPT or Azure OpenAI. And finally, I'm going also to explore a bit more how I built this assistant in OutSystems, what were the tricks underneath it, and also at the same time what are the limitations of the platform that basically made me had to create additional resources outside OutSystems. So we are going to explore these three topics today. Okay, so if we go to OpenAI webpage and we go check the documentation, we can read a lot about real-time API. And just going here a bit on the differences between this one, because normally we are more used to use the response API. Those is the more typical one. And in this case, the real-time API works very different because, as the name says, this is real-time. So it means that we will have always an open connection and we'll have a WebSocket connection so that we can continuously send chunks of messages and receive from the assistant. So as we can see here, there are two ways that we can connect with this real-time API. At the time that I implemented this, the WebRTC was yet not available, so I used the WebSockets. But you can also use WebRTC to allow a direct connection from a client side to the OpenAI assistant. But in this case, we need to always open and maintain a connection. Now, if we want now to understand a bit how does this concept of messages work, we can go check here the concept of conversations. So every time we start a session with the assistant, so a session object is created. For example, in my case in the application is when I click in the icon to start a real-time conversation. So a session is created, and everything that happens afterwards, it always references that session. So we have basically three types of messages that we can receive when we start a session. One is audio buffers. So this means that when we are talking to the assistant and when the assistant is talking back to us, we are not waiting for him to finish the whole conversation and then receive the full audio. So what we receive and what we send is small chunks that are smaller than 1 second, and those chunks will be streamed to the assistant. So this way we can maintain this fast real-time conversation. Okay, so the audio buffers are always going into one of the directions. If I'm talking, it's going to OpenAI, the assistant. If the assistant is talking, we are receiving those chunks, and we need on our side to feed those audio buffers into the record so that we can listen to a continuous conversation from the model. Then we have this concept of conversations. So the assistant, he detects when we are giving or creating a conversation item to him, and then he also creates a conversation item back to us. So he detects, because of the pauses that we give, he interprets that as a conversation item. So there is always this flow of me sending to him an item and then he giving back an item to me. So if we see here in the example, the user said to him, what time is it in Washington? So if we hear the audio here, this is a complete audio of this conversation item. So it's basically the sum of the chunks of the buffer audios. And then when he detects that we pause and we want him to engage, then he creates also a conversation item and he starts sending the buffers. When he finish the conversation item, we receive the full complete information. So we receive the transcription of everything he said, and we receive the complete audio of what was said. Okay, so these conversation items, they should not be used for the buffer, for the real time, because they are not real time. We only receive those items when that part is finished, but we can use this, for example, to list the conversations, to give to have a history of what was said. And then we have finally this concept of responses. So a response is every time the model detects that I asked something, I interact with him, and now he needs to generate a response. So this means that every conversation item from the assistant will belong to a certain response that he gave. So when imagine we are talking with him, we stop talking, a conversation item for us is generated, and then he detects that he now needs to engage, so he creates a response. He leaves this response in an in progress status, and he sends the audio that he needs to send to us, or the function calling, for example. And when he stops, we receive a conversation item and the response is considered done. So these are the objects that can be used for the different messages we receive from them. So the important thing here is that we need on our side to deal with the different types of messages that we can receive accordingly. And remember that we are always receiving them in any type of order, so we need to prepare our system to always handle these messages. How we know the types of messages that exist? If we go to the API reference, then you guys can see the different types of messages. There are 20 something different types of messages, and it's important for us to know them. Okay, so I think this is enough to give the overview of the real-time API. Now I think we can now jump to OutSystems and we can see how I did to implement this real-time API. Just remember that at the time the WebRTC was not yet available, so I had to use WebSockets. So let's see how did I overcome this situation. This is the Smart Assistant module, and you can see here we have the ticket management application that I just showed, and the only thing that we have here is the block for the assistant and the client actions to activate or to show these buttons here below or not. So this is very simple to implement, and we are going to see after this how can we implement the Smart Assistant in a different application. But let's deep dive a bit into now the Smart Assistant. Okay, so the first thing that I would advise to do is to start creating a playground. So in this case, I did not start immediately by creating the block to be used in all applications. So I didn't start by creating this assistant block. I started simply by having a playground with a chat interface here in the left, and on the right I basically built a list of or implemented a list of the events so that I could understand better the events that I received and when. So this is very important because it took me quite some time to understand the order of how the different messages would be sent. So if you build this list of events and you create this playground where you can start engaging with the assistant, it's very helpful because at the same time that you are giving audio messages or giving text, and then you receive the responses from the assistant, you can see in real time the order of the events that you receive. And with this order, you can also see the JSON that we receive, and it will be easier because each message also has its own format of a JSON. So my first advice would be to start with a playground. But okay, we already have the playground, we already know how to use. So how do I use this assistant? So first I wanted to give this multi-channel capability also when we are using the assistant on the OutSystems web pages. So I wanted to be able first to select if we want just a simple push to talk conversation, and the push to talk conversation is it's the one we are more used to, the normal OpenAI, is that I click on the button, I say what I need to say, and then I click to send, and he sends. So in this push to talk method, we do not use a real-time conversation. It's simply me saying something, then the model responds, and I also left this option for the users so that they decide if they want to have a real-time conversation, or if they just want to press a button, talk, and then stop and control the pace of the conversation. So this is the way to do this is by having when you create a session to OpenAI, you have a parameter called isVAD, where you can specify if you want to have a real-time conversation or if you want to have this push-to-talk mode. So this second button is where you define the mode of how you are going to interact with the assistant. And then we have here this third icon where it gives the possibility to open a text input, and we can send text to him for him to reply back. So in this case, I do not have implemented anywhere here, for example, the transcriptions where we can see the conversations. It could be an add-on to have like another button on the top where if the user clicks, it shows the history of the messages. But so far, I did not implement this part. So this is basically the UI of it, and most of the messages, the client actions that you see here are more to control this part of the UI. And let me now introduce a bit what I had to build besides the typical OutSystems code. You can see here how am I interacting between OutSystems and OpenAI. In this case, I'm using Azure OpenAI, but is exactly the same. In this case, Microsoft Azure, by acquiring OpenAI, he also has the same functionalities of the real time with exactly the same APIs and the messages, the types of messages. So this means that you don't have to change anything in your code when moving between OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. But right now, I used the Azure OpenAI real-time model. So I've deployed this model, and the moment I deployed this was now available to be used with a WebSocket connection. But we have a problem here, because WebSocket connections, they normally are not easy to implement in a secured way directly in the client side. And you might ask, okay, but that is on the client side. Why don't you simply use it on server side? Why don't you create a way for OutSystems on the server side to connect with the OpenAI model? And the answer for this is very simple. OutSystems does not allow to have WebSocket connections on server side. So even if you would create an extension, for example, using C#, it's not possible to maintain an open connection, because one characteristic of a WebSocket connection is that it needs to remain open, so it needs to have this concept of a session. And even if you use an extension is a stateless action. So it's something that you call, you receive a response, and nothing there remains. It's closed after the use of the extension. So this means that first, there is no way to create a WebSocket connection with OutSystems using server. But then you might ask, okay, so you can use client. And yes, it's possible to use client. But if you try to implement a WebSocket connection using JavaScript, you will see that it's not possible to connect using a secure connection. So this means that when you connect to Azure OpenAI WebSocket, you need to give an API key. So this connection is not public. You need to have the API key. But if you search on the web for WebSocket connection using JavaScript, you will see that if there is no library, external library, the native JavaScript can only connect to a WebSocket connection if it is public, if you don't need to send any header with an API key, because it does not allow for you to configure headers. So it means that you cannot have a WebSocket connection on OutSystems using the client side without the need of another protocol or another implementation. And yes, we saw it before. Now it's possible to connect using WebRTC, and I do believe that that solves that issue. We can use WebRTC, even though we need to export that library into a script on OutSystems side, and that was more or less what I did, but I did not use the WebRTC. In this case, what I used was Socket.io. So Socket.io, it's basically a library that allows you to create safe WebSocket connections between a client and a server. So with this Socket.io, what I did was I created this middle server that basically this middle server has a connection with both ways. So this server, when it runs, he connects to the WebSocket on Azure OpenAI, but at the same time he uses Socket.io to expose a WebSocket connection to the outside world in this case, and that's how I connect using OutSystems, because Socket.io in this case he uses his own way of authenticating. He manages that automatically, so we can use this method to connect between the two ways. But for me it was necessary to create this middle server, and the way to implement it, to be honest, I used ChatGPT for most of the code, but it's not a complex scenario. I know it has a lot of code here, but basically you start by we need to define the cores to allow OutSystems to connect with the server, but basically we connect, or we have the credentials to connect to the WebSocket, including the API key. In this case, you should replace the WebSocket URL for the one you have and the API key for your API key. And then what you do is that you use the Socket.io to create a connection. You basically deal with the different messages you can receive from OpenAI. And what you do also is you configure those messages to be sent between the two parts. So you see that this socket object is the Socket.io object. So we are talking about this left part, and the OpenAI socket is the one on the right side. So what I do here, it's basically this server, it's simply a middleman. He receives a message from one, sends to the other, receives the message from the other, sends to the one. So it has a lot of code to control and to monitor, but it has a simple implementation. So this is the middle server that I discussed. And now I think we can go back to our OutSystems application. So now that we know how the servers communicate with each other, let me just show first some of the necessary scripts that I also had to implement. So in this case, as we discussed, I have the socket.io library here, and it's a library that it's available to be added as a CDN, so you can copy and add it to here. Then I have this wave tool pack, and this is an important thing because it's very hard to combine the buffer audios into a fluent audio player, and this helps a lot by already giving us the tools to simply add the buffer files, and he will on his side play the audio smoothly. So I found this, or didn't found this. This is basically part of the OpenAI example. So if you guys go to the OpenAI documentation, you will see that they have their GitHub project of implementing an example of an assistant, and they have this web tool pack, so you can copy from there and add to the script. So this way you guys will have a smooth way to use the audio. So you need these two to help operate the assistant. So now, what is the difference in this way of developing the assistant? Is that so far with the other methods, with the response API, and even for example using AI agent builder on ODC, everything was on server. So you would have server actions or service actions to call the module, so everything would happen on server. Now things happen on client side. So this means that the logic is all through client actions. And this is one of the most important action, the one we receive event handlers. But also there is here another complication. The fact that OutSystems doesn't like real flexible structures. And the fact that each message has its own JSON with its own structure, it means that for us to use the concept of serialize and deserialize this into OutSystems structures, we would have to have a lot of structures, we would have to have a lot of conditions to know the type of message, then converting, and basically because of that, I decided that it would be easier if I simply use JavaScript and I deal with the events and the messages through JavaScript. That's why you see basically a lot of JavaScript. So we basically activate the assistant by giving by sending a session like you saw it, and I do not want to go through all the details of how I'm doing this. Feel free to ping me if you want me to help with this, but one important thing here is basically the interaction of the agent, right? Because if you saw in the demo, the assistant, he did not simply talk back to me, but he also indeed interact with the web page, right? So he, on the different screens, he was able to click on links, he was able to write text in inputs. So how is he doing that? And I'm basically using functions for that. So what I'm doing is I give instructions to the assistant, and I say you are a helpful assistant, you reply to the user, but additionally you also need to interact with the web page. And I created a function called getWebsiteAction, where I define in the parameters, the first parameter is the type of action, if it is a click, if it is a write, an erase, and also the second input is, for example, the text in case of being of type writing. And I give instructions to the assistant saying if the user asks you to do something on the page, you should reply with the tool, and you should give the action, the text, and also another input that I forgot to mention, very important, the ID of the HTML element. So every time I ask him, go to client's page, he should reply to me with a function call saying, I want to do an action of type clicking on this HTML widget ID. And what I do on my side is I process it by performing the action using JavaScript. Then I say if it is of type over, go to mouse over. If it is of type erase, do what it needs to be done, erase. If it is of type click, do the click. So for each one of them, I basically use JavaScript to interact with the page. So I basically gave the capability for the assistant to interact with the web page. But now you might be wondering, okay, he has that capability on his side, but how does he know how to click, right? Because you are simply giving to him an audio of yourself saying go to clients. How does he know that he needs to click on a link and which link, right? And the way I'm doing this is because I'm basically, every time I change a page or I create a session, I'm sending him two things. I'm sending a screenshot of the page. So I take a screenshot and I send to him. And I'm also sending him the HTML code of the page. So this means that whenever we start a session, he receives a screenshot and an HTML code. And with that, by having those two, he knows which HTML element he needs to click, and he gives me that information. This is a bit what we are now seeing with the computer use capability, where OpenAI gives instructions of where to click or what to do. It's a bit similar. In this case, at the time that I developed this, there wasn't yet the computer use, so I created this way for him to interact with the page. And yeah, it works, and it's very cool because this means that this assistant can adapt to the pages. You don't need to train him for specific pages. You don't need to train with him and giving instructions saying what it is a ticket, the fields that a ticket should have. You can do that also. It helps him become more precise. But if you give him the HTML page of the page, he can very well adapt to it. And he can do also other cool things, for example, describing a page. So imagine that the person that is checking this, for example, is a blind person, or if the person cannot see the content of the page, he can simply ask to the assistant saying, hey, what do the page has? And he will say it has a header on the top with these links, then it has a table with these elements, and you can ask him things about the elements. You can say how many clients are from Portugal, can you click on this client, and then when it goes to the client, can you give me the details of this client? so he can interact with the page because he has the code of the page. So this is basically how I'm building the assistant. And yeah, I'm very happy with this functionality. It's really cool. I think it's mostly cool than it is of a big use cases, but I think it brings here a complete different way of having assistants interacting with our pages. Because right now it's not just simply having a chatbot that you can ask him informations about it, but you can really have a chatbot that he can also interact with the web page. So he can do things for you. For example, if you don't know how to do something, imagine that the application would be a very complex application, and you didn't know how to do a certain action. If this assistant it's also trained on having, for example, the instructions of the different pages of the portal, and you say to him, I don't know how to do this, can you do this for me? Then yeah, he can then follow the necessary actions to go to the place where you need him to go. So this is a very cool. Now let's explore how we can easily add this to a new application. Okay, so let's start with an empty application. So I have just created this application called HR app. The goal is for us to build a simple application for the HR to check the employees that it exists. So you can see that this is still empty, no tables, and let's just put here something very simple as an employee. Let's add a name. Let's add the department that he belongs. Right now let's just put one simple entity. Let's not create other references, just for the simplicity of it. So let's put here the department, the role, and starting date. Okay, so we have the employee here. Very simple application, and let's go create a typical list and detail page. So right now we have the list of employees with the link. We have the possibility to add an employee, and we have here a form to fill the employee, and already with the CRUD to create. So this is ready to be used by as a simple application, right? So we can create employees and we can see them. So now we want to add the adaptive assistant here on this page. And to do that, there are only one thing that we need to put on our site. So in this case, we have to use the assistant. We have to call the assistant as we have here. So in this case, for example, I always opt to put in the header or in the menu so that it can automatically be on all the pages. You can also, if you prefer to put it on the pages and go on each page and add the assistant, that's totally okay. Or if you want just the assistant to be on one specific page, that's okay. In this case, I put it on the menu. So this is a very simple button. You can see here, it's just a button, and then I call the assistant. So let's do the same thing. Let me just copy the button because it has this cute icon and I like the icon. So let's go here to the nav. Let's put this into a container, and I think in the other one I did like a margin just to be cute, right? Yeah, pussies. So yeah, let me also do the same thing here just to be with the part. So we have here the button, and if we check what we do on the ticket manager, this button simply calls the toggle assistant, so that it will activate or deactivate. So let's get the dependencies for the smart assistant. So we have here the assistant and the toggle assistant. Okay. So now we can call the action toggle assistant, and we can also say if we want by default to be already a conversation mode or if we want to be a push to talk mode. So if you don't say anything, the default is to be true, so it means that is the push to talk method. So we have the possibility to do this, and we can also select the voice we want. And by default, if we don't put anything, the voice will be the Alloy voice, and you can check the available voices on, in this case, on Azure, OpenAI, or in OpenAI. So we have the button, and then we simply need, to drag the assistant. And the assistant automatically works with an absolute position of being here in the end. I didn't do anything regarding giving the extensibility to create classes. It can be something to do in the future, but so far I just wanted to show the simplicity of using the assistant. So right now the assistant is here and it's ready to be used in the application. But now, this is something that so far I did not give a workaround. It's possible to do it, but so far this would not work 100% of the situations. And the reason for that is because of the widget IDs, the HTML widget IDs. So as I said, when we open a page, I'm sending the HTML code to him, right? So it means that he can detect link elements, he can detect button elements, and also other types of elements, right? But regarding these two, if we ask him to click on a certain element or to write on a certain input, we are expecting him to give us the widget ID, so that we can then on JavaScript call the getElementById and perform the action, right? So it means that right now, as it is, when we will publish this application, OutSystems will not create an ID for this link, because the way OutSystems works, he only creates IDs if they are necessary or if we give a name. So this means that one of the situations so far, or for now, that we need to ensure is that we give a name for the link. So let me put here employee detail. For this button, it will be new employee. And on a menu, this is also a link. Let's call employees or employee list. So this is the only customization that we need to do. I believe that on the inputs we don't need to worry, because OutSystems automatically puts the name of the inputs when we are scaffolding. But for the buttons and the links, we need to do it. So probably the save here also doesn't have. Save employee and back. One way that we could overcome this was if we could, instead of receiving also the IDs, we could configure the assistant to give us or the ID if it exists, or if it does not exist, the ID to give us the full element, so that we could check the type of element, check the classes that it has, and could find ways to find the element by using, for example, the class names or parents or something like that. So we could ask the assistant to give us that. I think it would be a bit more complex because there are situations that are a bit hard to find a certain element if they are too generic. But yeah, in this case, what I did was I simply give names to the elements. So right now, this application is ready to use the assistant, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so we have the application, and yeah, we can see it's a very simple application, just with the possibility to add an employee. With just one menu. So we have the button here. Let's click on it and let's activate the real-time mode. Hello there.
Hello, how can I assist you today?
I need to add a new employee.
Sure, to add a new employee, I'll click on the Add Employee button on the web page. Here we go. Done. The page for adding a new employee should now be open. What would you like to do next?
I need to create a new employee. So we have a new colleague that is going to join. His name is Steve Rogers. He will work for the marketing department, and he will be a junior consultant. He will start working at the 1st of June of 2025.
All set. The new employee's details are entered. Would you like me to save the new employee now?
Yes.
Done. Steve Rogers has been successfully added to the employee list. If you need any more assistance, feel free to ask.
Okay, so yeah, we see that it's fully ready to be used in a new application without having too much to do. We just need to drag or to use the references of the assistant and put the names on the links and on the bottom so that they have IDs. So yeah, this is the adaptive assistant. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this real-time API implementation in OutSystems. Feel free to ping me if you want to know more about how to implement in detail some parts of the smart assistant or the adaptive assistant. And follow me for more videos of OutSystems and AI. We will try other things rather than this. And hope you guys enjoy it. See you on the next video.